I think historically as journalists, technology has changed the way my journalism practiced over 20 years or so. So when I started, for example, it was impossible to make a phone call to other parts of the world, and I worked in radio and current affairs. Things like running a 24-hour news channel were completely impossible when I started journalism because you couldn't get people up on a phone line or a satellite, it was too expensive. And so changes in technology completely transformed the kind of output that we see now. So first 24-hour radio, things like Five Live wouldn't have been possible, but certainly international service radio, which is what I was working on, wouldn't have been able to do rolling current affairs programs, for example. Then the arrival of the internet, which has essentially meant that, as well as telling stories in broadcast, in radio and television terms, video, you're also now telling stories in text, in multimedia, mixing them all together. So actually the whole storytelling nature has changed. I'm not really a practicing journalist, but I write reports and I do sort of journalistic research kind of work. And so whereas in the past I would have used a notebook and a specific recorder for the task, now I just use my iPhone. So I'll still sort of note things down, but quite often I'll just set the iPhone running. I might take a few pictures to remind me of particular things. So I'll snap a few things, email them to myself, and now everything that I do is wireless. And I have a Mac, an iPad, and an iPhone, and everything's in the cloud, and I hardly ever print anything. I think one of the biggest challenges is information overload for journalists. What we've seen in the last 10 years or so is a complete flood of information from every part of the world. You don't just keep on top of the conventional sources like newswires, you also have social media to deal with, user-generated content, things people are sending to you, email. There's a number of different potential sources and that fear of missing things. So I think the piece of technology that journalists need is some way of filtering that and bringing to the top things that are most relevant to them, and the things that either are most relevant to them at the time because they're working on a particular story. So it's really sort of almost like a clever digital assistant agent that's going out and finding things and saying you're interested in this or you should be interested in this. I think this issue of how you organise your sources and your technology, and you really invest in that up front. So you really think about whatever the story you're covering or the particular area that you're focusing on. How do you organise that information flow so that you have a really quick, smart way of reading it, keeping across the news, being alerted when things matter. So that's really about understanding what technology is there and that you can use to do that kind of filtering. Really thinking about who the best people would be to follow on Twitter, for example, or around a particular story, and managing those incoming sources. I think will really put you in a strong position. I think, I think things like Twitter correspondent is a bit ridiculous. Like we'd have a telephone correspondent, would we? Or we had internet correspondents a few years ago as well. There were a whole slate of internet correspondents. They don't last very long because it doesn't really make much sense. So in one sense, of course, it's now everyone's job to understand, as journalists, to understand social media, understand how it works, and to use it as a source in intelligent ways. So you don't need a Twitter correspondent, but you do need correspondents to focus on specific areas that are of interest and to translate that for a general audience. So technology correspondents or social media correspondents. I think that journalism will be less binary than it used to be. You used to be a print journalist or a broadcast journalist, and you had this set of skills. It's not going to split up like that anymore. You might have curation journalists, investigative journalists, different kinds of journalists, but it'll be a different mix.